After two first questions of my part, then I want to ask you to please come up with your attitudes, your thoughts and your questions. First question to Gunnar Dedio. In the blog, which I highly recommend to you, the blog of the conference which you find on the web, you say, I would wish that the non-national way of looking at history would become the normal way of looking at history. What is a normal way of looking at history and why that?
Yeah, difficult one. I can say you that the whole series started in my kitchen. My wife is Polish, so by whatever reason we started discussing something about the Great War, and I suddenly learned that being Polish, you have a totally different perspective on the same thing, what I learned in school very differently. So out of this, wouldn't say conflict, the idea started. And then we met with a historian we both know very well, Oliver Jans, to look deeper into it. And then probably without knowing, you gave me the second like impulse, because at that time on the market I found your book German Atrocities. So, and we discussed it and said, look, this is exactly, let's try the opposite of a national point of view, of a German atrocities. I know you're playing with the propaganda term, this is obvious, but the idea was, let's try to put all these broadcasters in Europe together and propose them to tell one story about a conflict they have.
One quick question to that. How difficult was it to get the multinational partners to really believe in that narrative and open their pockets for it?
It was difficult. My first experience with it was a couple of years back. I tried a French-German co-production, a series as well, about Napoleon. It didn't work out. It was in a very nice restaurant in Cannes, where finally after half a year we said, no, there's no point in making that. So we tried one more time. This time it worked quite well. Having said this, it took some time. The first reaction, like from a British broadcaster, without saying the name, was, yeah, why don't we take all Brits and make a separate series out of it? And we said, look, no, this is not exactly what we had in mind. And but then over a period of time, we could convince like 26 broadcasters to join.
And one of the reasons was that you had the narrative of normal people diaries, of all, as far as you said, that was the perspective. I would like to come to Professor Kramer for a last question from my part, then I want to ask you to join in. Aleida Assmann says that the way how we commemorate is part of our identity. Are we already Europeans enough, all together, to have that sort of European commemoration?
The problem I find with that approach is that there never is actually one national identity, let alone one European identity. There are multiple identities. If we just take the German case, which I happen to know well from my research, in the Weimar Republic, the memory of the war was totally divided. Opinion was polarized between those on the right, as I said, who actually wanted nothing better than to fight the First World War again and win it the next time round, and those who wanted never again war. So they could never agree on a national commemoration, even something as simple as a national memory of the same event. Now, okay, it's easier maybe in the victor countries because, well, things worked out well, more or less, but even a country like Italy, a victor country, The memory of the war was highly contested, and without the experience of the war, of course, no fascism. So even in the Allies, I think it's difficult to speak of a collective memory. I have problems with this. There are milieu, there are Catholic milieu, there are socialist milieu who have a different perspective. There are pacifists in each country. They again have a different perspective. So I think we just have to accept these differences and say, well, okay, it is completely correct, and I think your approach in having a multinational, a transnational approach to what was a multinational and transnational event is absolutely right, of course. I'm not at all arguing that we should go back to national memory or national commemoration. That would really be a reactionary step. But we have to integrate the local, the individual, which why I think your film was so great, that we have these individual, the 12-year-old girl at school in Schneidermühl and the 14-year-old Cossack daughter and the 10-year-old French boy. This is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Your opinions, please, or your question. And if you were so kind to just quickly introduce you, who you are, where you're coming from, not necessarily the country, but...
My name is Detlef Möse. I'm from Berlin. I'm a translator and interpreter. My question is, we have, as you might know, we have already a European Broadcasting Union, the EBU, who every year provides the Prix Europa. Why couldn't they have done it? It would be the national, the natural company, for that.
We cooperated with EBU, but EBU is a kind of network. So they try to put broadcasters together, but they don't have an execution power, and they don't have money to fund such. You need at least €8 million to make a series like this. So you need a couple of strong financial partners, and EBU does not have funding for it. But EBU was partnering, and EBU was helping bringing the network together.
Can you tell us a figure, just quickly? How many people did you attract via maybe the web also, but only through the series, through the episodes?
Yeah, and until now in Europe, the US and Australia, we had about 30 million viewers from April until now.
Next question, next thought, please. Next confrontational point. Yes, please. I think we hear you quite well. No further grabbing.
I'm Abdurrahim Abu Hussein from the American University of Beirut. I'm a professor of history. Do you plan in future episodes to cover the theater in the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East?
This is already done, yes. These are 8 episodes. We saw one, and of course we are not able to cover in 8 hours every single aspect of the war, but there were some aspects connected to the Ottoman Empire which we thought we cannot leave out. Yes.
When are they told? Which episode?
Oh, they should.
Okay, I postponed the question. Please, another question from your part. Yes, please. You get a mic.
I'm Hagde Moyan from Armenia, director of Armenian Genocide Museum. The question is the same. Which episode?
Is it in?
Yes, there is. Armenia, this is what I wanted to say, it plays, of course, an important role. The second, we have a lot of opinions on Amazon about this series and the book, and the second or the third opinion we had there was that the whole series must have been financed by some Armenian nationalist sponsors because of the lies we are telling about what happened at that time. This was interesting for me. It's still there. You can read that on Amazon, which was interesting for me, which kind of conflict we provoke with some, I don't know, 10 minutes of film.
Can I add, not especially related to your question, but another question to Professor Kramer, to the national narrative question. Anna Kaminsky, the director of the Federal Foundation for the Study of Communist Dictatorship, on the blog, she says an interesting thing. She says that the Eastern European perspective could be told within European commemoration in a new, and maybe I wouldn't say more balanced, this is now my words, way. What else could change from your perspective if the European commemoration way of narrative is addressed?
Well, the war started in Europe, but really it was a global war. So I think what should change is actually to globalize it. We need a memory of the war in Africa, which is sorely missing. It's not just the war in Southwest Africa, in which only a few 10,000 on each side fought, but in German East Africa, 100,000 porters working for the Allies died. And as a result of the devastation in East Africa, 1 million civilians died. So there is no memory globally of this. And maybe there's a regional memory, but we're living in a globalized society. We ought to know more about this sort of thing.
Yes, please. And there's another, sir, over there. First you, please, yes.
Thank you. My name is Pál Hatos. I'm from Hungary, historian, and I would like just to comment this issue that the small nations and small East European nations perspective very important, and this is very important in the context what's happening right now in Europe. We need more Europe, and in order to need more Europe and to enhance the recognition of our indebtedness to Europe, we need that we know that others want to know us. We got very harsh words about the book of Sleepwalkers, but in fact, this was an essay to take into account of this kind of micro context of the war. So it's very important to really diverse the perspectives. Of course, normal peoples, but apart from Kate Kollwitz, Yves Congar was the most important theologian of the 20th century, who died as a cardinal, but in 1950 he was. So I don't know what will be the next phase of the film, but these were really the highlights of the European culture, these testimonies right now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we chose to have 14 main characters out of the participating countries. And as you saw, we have, additionally to these 14 main characters, we established, like, we call them chorus characters. So in between, we have some themes, and there we have quotations from characters which appear once or twice with one sentence only, where we spread all over the world. But these main characters we found in more than 1,000 diaries we went through. It's difficult if you want to cover at least the main idea of that war from different perspectives. Not all, but a lot of them. Then you need characters which write good, which describe feelings, thoughts, which write about themselves and which just not repeat what everybody else said. So it's very difficult. And we found some characters like Karl Kasser, which is an Austrian just Bauer, very, very normal person, or Pierrot is a French very simple person, she can barely write. And these diaries were new, but you don't find a lot of them. You find good diaries then from people like Yves Congar, who is 8, 9 years old at the time, but who was already at that time quite intelligent, to write quite intelligent observations, and he becomes then later on a cardinal. So to choose these characters was not easy, but I hope that these 14 characters together form a kind of main idea of the war.
One very quick question. How do you very often use the means of creating a sentence, what I thought was very convincing, out of many languages and many different voices, to then like let occur a kind of European multi-dimensional prisma?
Yeah,
do you use that through all episodes?
It's through all episodes. It's kind of like you have it in a cantate from Johann Sebastian Bach, that you have the main characters and you have the chorus bringing main ideas from all over the world, and there we have Japanese, Chinese, Persian, all kind of people participating in that war, in having quotations in Pashto and.
There was another. Oh yeah, we are. I'm looking to Dr. Thilo. You tell me when to stop. Yeah, please introduce yourself.
Martin Bayer, wartist from Berlin. Thank you very much indeed, first of all, for this very interesting approach to tell about different narratives. Regarding the film materials from wartime, it shows a mixture of documentaries and sometimes propaganda material. How challenging is it, do you think, for the audience to distinguish which one is which, especially if you have an audience, usually, which are not historians? Thank you.
This is not possible to distinguish for a normal audience, I think for nobody, in fact. And it is interesting that to go into that subject, because film is very young. Film existed like barely for 10, 15, 16 years. So there was nearly no documentary like we understand it today. If you look on the documentary side of the film, the drama is probably more documentary than the archive footage. Because the drama is made very precisely with historical accuratess. But the archive, the idea with the use of the archive was that we draw a picture which is altogether gives a true kind of true picture. But yes, most of the films shot there are propaganda, and it's up to us to decide what we use and how we use it, so that the propaganda side of it is all used to say, look, this is propaganda, or that we use excerpts of it and we interweave it with, intercut it with drama, so that that it gives together historical accurate picture.
Can I quickly interfere to Professor Kramer? Is that, from your historian perspective, is that okay?
Oh, yes.
To not, as he said, maybe nobody will recognize what is what.
Yeah, I think that the distinction you made was the distinction you made is very good. That ultimately all of the film material from that time is staged. There was no live action film of battle right through until well after the First World War. So they are representations of something that is staged by directors. So perhaps, I don't know, might it be better to explain that? But it is true, yes, that you are using film that was actually created with proper intention for documentary purpose. But the explanation at the background, I think, is usually sufficient, actually. And so when you have the picture of the woman being put up against a wall and being shot, the viewer knows that, aha, because of the introduction, because of the moderation. It is propaganda.
There was another person in the third, fourth row. Maybe the last one?
Okay, Joke van der Leeuw from Euroclio. I was, when you were talking about this European commemoration and the very many perspectives, I think that looking at especially World War I commemoration, it's very much still in the hands of the states and the politicians who want to tell a certain story. And I haven't heard anything about that. If I look how Britain was dealing with the commemoration, with all the poppies and everything, I would say it's very much still a state issue, how we commemorate the past. And if we want to go beyond that, we really need political will to go beyond it.
Well, the thing about commemoration is that, of course, the state has an interest in commemorating and in communicating a particular message. However, a great deal of commemoration actually is driven from the bottom up. So all the local war memorials, both in Germany and in Belgium, where, of course, there were war memorials not only to the soldiers who were killed, but also to the civilians who were killed. That was done at a local level by popular subscription. In Germany, most of the war memorials in the villages and towns were actually by local initiative from below. Now, of course, we know that national monuments at the level of the Cenotaph in Whitehall in Britain and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in France at the Arc de Triomphe, of course, that's a national item as well. And these big celebrations with military parades and so on, those are national pieces of commemoration. But at the same time, we also have historians who are not writing on behalf of the state at all. So it's both a top-down and a bottom-up process. So I don't think we can say this is all state manipulation by any means.
Can I sum this up with a last question from my part to both of you? I just heard a keynote by Jeremy Rifkin, a philosopher from the United States, who says the internet is the biggest shift of paradigm for the last 100 to 200 years. Having that in mind, and you, with the online archive you're working with another 1,000 historians on, we are talking about co-creation processes, about civil society interfering with what has been power of the few before. Do you expect that also the way of commemoration will change more? You are creating a web series. This is interactive, what you're going to do, through not only 3D printers, but the web, the way it's going on. Maybe you can just summarize very quickly.
Very quickly, I have 3 kids. I have to convince them to read a normal book made of paper. They don't know what television is, and they grow up with the internet. So whatever they see, they learn, whatever kind of films they see, and this was an idea of that series that we want to target at a young audience. So we use the tools of a drama to hide documentary content and to bring that to kids. And yes, this is seen on iTunes. So I think if we don't put a proper content there at that place, they will not look for it in books like we learned.
Will the internet change the way?
1914, 1918 online international encyclopedia of the First World War is not designed to be a piece of commemoration. It's designed as a piece of open access scholarship. Now, some of that may well be taken by its users as a part of commemoration. And I think what you say is hugely significant, Herr Dedio, because the current generation of our students and indeed children, they're not going to take their primary source of information from books or even, as you say, TV. So yes, and the online encyclopedia is precisely not a piece of top-down propaganda putting forward a particular message. It is very much driven by us, the scholars and academics. Now, of course, we got state funding for it, yes. 1 million euros very generously provided by the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, the German science community, but they do not have any input or any control over editorial content. We control the editorial content. So I think to to answer both questions, yes, the internet is going to become increasingly, hugely important for both for scholarship and for commemoration.
So thank you both very, very much. Thank you very much for your great attention. Sorry for delaying slightly a little bit. I wish you a very successful conference with a lot of new insights, and yeah, thank you very much.